Welcome back to row 14. Now we're going to start traveling a little bit faster to the left and to the right. We can see on our chart that we're going to go out and then come back in, and that's exactly what we're going to do here. Now previously we've moved our stitches over, our cable lines have been crossing over 1 or 2 single crochets. We're going to start now by crossing over 3, which is really unique to Infinity Crochet. We could cross over more single crochets on the front if we wanted to. We can travel as fast as we want to without having those holes and those gaps on the background to worry about. So that's what's really awesome about this. So starting in row 14, what we will do is we'll chain 1 and we will single crochet 11, which I've already got here. Then our next step will to be front float 3 treble. So we're going to yarn over twice. We're going to go to those first floating stitches, that first set of 3, and we are going to front float 3 floating stitches, and they will be a treble. Now remember from the previous video that I tend to go through the stitches instead of completely around for a less bulky connection between these floating stitches. Now we will single crochet 10 without skipping any on the background. And then it helps to kind of turn your work for this next step. And we are going to front float 3 trebles again. I'm hoping you're feeling a bit more comfortable with this right now and confident that we can get to the end. I'm confident you can. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment on this video or in the community group. We have a lot of amazing people in there that are always more than willing to help with the knowledge they have, and of course I will answer questions as well. For the rest of the row, we will single crochet in the remaining 11 stitches. As you can see, we are able to start to travel outwards without any holes or gaps behind those floating stitches. So finish this row, do the odd row where we single crochet in each stitch across, skipping those floating stitches, and come on right back. Alright, for row 16, we will chain 1 and single crochet in the first 8 as I've done here, and then we will front float 3 treble stitches. So we're going to front float this first floating stitch with a treble, and the second. So it's basically what we did on the previous row. We're just moving and shifting and traveling a little bit. And here's that third one. I hope that you're not only following along with the video, but also keeping track of these papers that you see in my background. I hope you've printed those or you have those up on a screen. The reason why is I think it's really beneficial to not only watch a video to understand how to do something, but also be able to read a pattern and a chart. So I'm trying to hit all 3 here on this video so that whether you have all or just one of those items, you are able to complete the project because you can understand and follow each one individually or all together for extra explanations. All right, we're going to single crochet 16. Am I almost there? Let's do one more, yeah. And then we are going to front float 3 treble stitches again on this other side. So much fun to watch these floating stitches on the front of our work and how they take shape. And it's quite simple in terms of, you know, our background stitches for this project stay the same. Our floating stitches move across our work quite nicely. And we don't have to worry about gaps or holes. We're not skipping any stitches on the background. And then the added benefit to Infinity Crochet is as you work these cable stitches and you put them every which way around your work, it's not changing the gauge of your background. We could add more cabled lines on top of this and keep our background gauge the same. You can see we're forming the square of this washcloth and it's staying nice. It's a nice even gauge, yet we have this on the front. And if we really want to get intricate, we can. And I do that later on in other patterns. My very intricate looking patterns, they can look intimidating, but this is all it is. It's just a lot of these front floating stitches that cross and move, and the background stitches can remain the same. We can also do different type of stitches on the background with this. We can do not only double or link double or half, but we can do like shell stitch, we can do linen stitch, we can do a lot of different stitches as our background stitch and throw these nice floating stitches on the front. So for row 17, once again, complete all the single crochet on the reverse side, skipping those floating stitches. We can kind of see where our cables are, but they hide really well and then come on right back. We're still going to be traveling and we're going to chain 1, single crochet in the first 5, and then we will front float 3 treble stitches. So once again, we're just traveling, but kind of repeating the same thing, just moving where our floating stitches are. And then we will single crochet 22. Oh, don't want to skip any on the back. Now I know I go back and forth in my language a little bit between floating stitches and cable stitches. We look at these stitches on the front and they look like a cable, so that tends to be what we call them a little bit. It looks like cabling. But the reason why I've labeled them as floating stitches versus, using something like a front post stitch is because floating stitches have a little bit different rules. We can actually put floating stitches on top of a front post, back post, rib type background. So I needed them to be called something else to identify them from the background, and they act a bit differently. They kind of follow different rules, so they needed to be called something new. And when you have a floating stitch, you automatically will know that you will always be skipping on the reverse side those front floating stitches. Where with front post, back post type cabling, that wasn't the case necessarily. All right, now that we've single crochet 22, we will front float 3, treble again. And then we will single crochet 5 to get to the end of row 16. On the back side of this, be sure to once again just single crochet across, skipping those floating stitches. We will chain 1 and single crochet in the first 5, and then we are going to front float 3 double crochet. So it's really important to pay attention to those abbreviations so we know how many times we're yarning over and what type of stitch we'll be completing for this front float group. Then we will single crochet 22 to the other side of this front float pattern. As you notice on the chart, the lines are very abrupt. I mean, when we're charting, it's not as fluid as yarn would be. So you'll notice that this, especially right here, it looks like a very sharp angle. But when we put it onto something like yarn that's a bit more fluid than these straight lines, it adds a nice curve. So sometimes the charts will look a bit more rigid than they will on your actual crochet piece, which is nice that the crochet piece softens these lines out a little bit and makes them nice and curvy. But the chart gives us a great visual to know where to put our stitches and kind of what it's going to look like, how it will travel, and the spacing between each one. So instead of traveling left and right for this row, we're just going to travel our stitches vertical. So when I get to this side, I will front float 3 double crochet, and then single crochet in the last 5. Do the back side, the wrong side, as we've done all the previous ones, and come on right back. For row 22, as we can see on this chart, we're going to start working our lines back inward. What we will do is just simply repeat the directions on row 16. So we will single crochet 8, then we are going to front float 3 treble. It's kind of a good idea to turn your work here to get into the stitches whenever we're working in that direction. So while the instructions are the same as row 16, we are actually moving our lines back inwards. And then we will single crochet in the next 22 stitches. Now I've talked before about, is that right? Oh, sorry, the next 16 stitches. Single crochet in the next 16 stitches. I've talked a bit about reversible. I wanted to touch on that really quick while I work across here. All of Infinity Crochet can, in theory, be done reversible. I've done quite a few, and the trick to it is simply to keep track of one side and the other side. So what if I wanted to do this one as reversible, I would follow the instructions, but on every wrong side row, I would be skipping the front floating stitches and repeating the previous row. So your design on the back will start one row above the front. So they're slightly off, but they do mirror each other. And like for row 2, I would do my opening curve while also skipping those front float stitches on the first side. It's worth trying. I think I'll probably do a video in the future for anyone who wants to do something that is reversible. It is quite nice, and it's really nice to have that ability. Okay, now I've single crocheted 16. We are going to front float 3 treble. And single crochet in the last 8, and then work the odd row by skipping all the floating stitches and single crocheting in each single crochet across. We're starting to work that back in. For row 24, we will be repeating row 14 where we single crochet 11, and then we will front float 3 treble. And here's that third front float. And then after this, we'll be single crocheting 10. And then we will be doing front float 3 treble. So here's our first front float. This is what I really love, seeing these lines work up. Each row just adds a little bit more to the overall piece, and you can see where it's headed. And it works up quite quickly. Now we will single crochet in the remaining stitches of this row, and on the back side we'll single crochet, skipping those front floats. And that's row 24. For row 26, we will start by chaining 1 and single crocheting in the first 14. Then we will front float 3 treble, or FF3TR. I'm hoping these abbreviations seem a lot less scary now, and you understand why they're done that way, and they're pretty straightforward once you know what they are. And now we will single crochet into the next 4. And we will front float 3 trebles again. Oh, I kind of snagged that yarn there. Another way, just so you know, if sometimes I have these and I'm like, oh, my tension was a little bit loose on the round before, you can go down on the stitch a little bit more to tighten up that without having to undo it and go back and redo your previous row. You can kind of play around with the tension on these to either give it more slack or tighten it up a little bit. And then for the rest of this row, we will single crochet 14 all the way across. Wow, look at that. We've already worked back into where we will get ready to do that cross up here. But isn't that beautiful? We've done a left cross, we've worked out and back in quite quickly. I hope you're really enjoying this. Come on back for the next steps.